The Rock thanks the Knoxville Ice Bears Southern Professional Hockey League team for their support. Their 2023-24 home ice season from October through April includes games with Fayetteville, Huntsville, Roanoke, and more at the Civic Coliseum downtown. Single game and season tickets at KnoxvilleIceBears.com. Rock Solid Sports features Ice Bears Wednesdays with news and updates. Volunteer Radio says, "Go Ice Bears!"
This is Jason Isbell, and you're listening to 90.3 The Rock, Knoxville's home for classic alternatives.
Knoxville, be sure to tune in Wednesday nights from 8 until 10 for The Alternative, featuring 2 hours of the best of Americana music. Stations that first brought Knoxville music by bands from back in the old country days, like Green on Red, The Blasters, The Jayhawks, Uncle Tupelo, and Jason and the Scorchers. And 90s Americana, like the Big Boys, Whiskey Town, Gillian Wells, Wilco, and others. Modern-day Americana musicians like Margot Price, Zach Bryan, Tyler Childers, Turnpike Troubadours, and Charlie Crockett. You'll also get classic Americana like Lucinda Williams, the Flying Burrito Brothers, and the Birds. And there's local Americana by R.B. Morris, Bruce Contreras, Trisha G. Brady, a the artist, and others. There's always Patsy Cline at 9 and James's going Bliss gift cards. As is the upcoming Americana concerts in the area. So, if Americana music makes your musical pop TikTok, tune in Wednesday nights at 8 for The Alternative. Sponsored by Boyd Chicken Grill, Bliss, and Bliss Home. And only on 90.3 The Rock, Texas College of Rock.
Volunteer Radio receives support from Tennessee Smokies Baseball, a Double-A Southern League affiliate of the Chicago Cubs. The 2024 regular season schedule includes 6-game homestands Tuesday through Sundays now into September at Smoky Stadium, Kodak. Rock Solid Sports will have weekly Smokies updates. TheSmokiesBaseball.com, linked up at WUTKRadio.com.
Hey, this is Zoe Nutt. You're listening to 90.3 The Rock, Volunteer Radio, local music's best friend.
All right, we are coming back in here at Rock Solid Sports. So sorry about that. Can't get the music to pull up there, but we are back here at Rock Solid Sports. Coming into our second segment here, and we're going to be talking about March Madness just as a whole. We're getting closer and closer to the national tournament, and there are several tickets that have been punched, automatic qualifiers from small schools that have just managed to sneak into the tournament. Obviously, if you win a conference championship, you are in the tournament. Several small schools have done this. Guys, as we look around at some of the other tickets that have been punched, which small school that's already got in do you guys see as having some very high upside?
Yeah, I think Samford. I'm really liking what Samford did this season in that SoCon conference. Obviously a conference that has produced some teams before that have been able to get upsets. UTC, Furman, teams like that, and a relatively strong conference for a lower conference. I mean, you even had ETSU this year, or UNC Greensboro, have a good year in that conference this year. So yeah, I like what they did. They ended up going 29-5 over the year. They went 15-3 in the conference, and it was pretty easy for them. They kind of went through some of these teams. They beat Furman by a decent amount, ETSU. Other teams, Chattanooga, Wofford, you had to have a couple losses in there. At one point, they put up 134 points in a game, which is absolutely insane. Their leading scorer, who's Acor Ford, who's pretty good, and they picked up their first SoCon title. So I think they're looking pretty good, and it's a conference that we've seen be able to do stuff in March in the past, pull off some pretty big upsets, and I like where this team is sitting. I'm not sure where they're going to end up, bracket wise. That does play a part who they're going to be playing, but I like what they're able to do.
So I'm going to be a bit of a Maryland homer here, And I don't know if they have it locked in yet, but I've noticed the Towson Tigers have been pretty hot lately. They are 5th in the CAA standings. They have pulled off wins against UNC Wilmington, William and Mary, and a massive blowout against North Carolina A&T. Schools that, I'll be honest, most of them I've never heard of, but the rumblings here at home are that Towson is going to be hot come tournament time, and I'm going to be paying attention a lot to them.
Yeah, looking at it.
Oh, sorry.
I pulled up Samford and what they're looking at. It would be a tough matchup. Right now, it looks like they're the 13th seed in the Eastern bracket, and their matchup would be Kansas, which would be tough just historically what Kansas has been able to do, and even though they've fallen off down the stretch, but still like Samford.
Yeah, and there's some really, and again, there's some other really interesting smaller schools that could do some damage, still in search of an automatic qualifier, such as Montana, who's 23-10. They're playing in their conference championship very late tonight against arch rival Montana State, but they should beat them. You also got teams like College of Charleston, who's looking pretty good. They just barely beat Stony Brook 82-79 in overtime. So that was a thriller there. College of Charleston is a 27-7 record. They've been really good lately. Oakland last night, they beat Milwaukee 83-76 to win the Horizon League. They could also be a bit of a dangerous team. You know, a lot of these smaller school conference champions, they end up doing some serious damage, that's for sure. So a lot of them looking pretty interesting. I think obviously the conference that's been talked about a lot as a smaller conference that's having a big impact on the tournament is the Missouri Valley Conference with Drake beating Indiana State. So Indiana State, it was assumed that the Sycamores would beat Drake, win the MVC title, and then Drake would be left out of the tournament just barely and would have to go to the NIT. However, Drake is one. They're automatically in. Might be a decently high seed, like a 14 seed. And Indiana State, you know, their fate is kind of left up to the committee. So what are we thinking about the Sycamores? Are we thinking Indiana State still gets in? And if they do, they could be a Cinderella team. Or are we thinking they just barely get left out because of the conference they play in?
It's going to be tough just because of that, strength of schedule, which we hear a lot about when it comes to this time of the year in college basketball. But I think they're able to sneak in. I think it's a great storyline, first of all. And, obviously that shouldn't play a huge factor. But I think it creeps into some people's head. I think everybody wants to see them in. And who knows what happens? It'd be great to see them go on a Cinderella run. It's hard to predict the teams that will. You just know that some of them you're likely going to get somebody who can do it. So it's going to be interesting. I'm not sure how likely it is. It's just tough with dropping that Drake game, but I'd love to see it personally.
Honestly, I'd like to see it as well. I bring it up every year. UMBC upsetting Virginia, the first 16 seed to upset a 1. We talk about it all the time. A lot of these little schools, if you give them enough hope, they can do almost anything, and I really want to see that in the tournament.
Yeah, I personally would love to see it as well. And the other tricky thing for Indiana State is they did play, and this is helping Michigan State, which I think the Spartans are good, but based on their season's gone, I think they are a little overrated. But a lot of people believe the Spartans are going to be in no matter how they do in the Big Ten tournament. But they beat Indiana State. Michigan State beat Indiana State. They also have that 20-point win over Baylor. So that's kind of why the Spartans are sitting in there, and Indiana State is kind of left outside. If Indiana State had just beaten Michigan State, which was kind of a close one, then this wouldn't even be a conversation.
Yeah.
And looking at some of the others, so here's some of the other major games, just as we talk about teams trying to sneak in, because we look at these conference matchups, and we're taking a look. By the way, update: Vanderbilt currently just barely ahead of Arkansas, 22-21 at the first time out. But as we take a look here and we see, here's some of the other major shakeups that have gone on just in the conference tournaments today. Joe, in my opinion, Wake Forest, they're a bubble team. They're just outside. They crushed Notre Dame 72-59. Here's another one. Xavier, they ruined the hopes and dreams of Butler. Xavier beats Butler 76-72. I think that takes the Butler Bulldogs out of the tournament picture entirely because their record's not all that good. And then another major one, Oklahoma loses to TCU 77-70 in the first round of the Big 12 tournament. A lot of people think Oklahoma is a lock, but I'm not so sure about that, especially after that. I think TCU has kind of stolen their spot there. What are you guys thinking about some of those results just from today and how they could shape up? Also, some other teams looking for big wins. Clemson's going to play later today. Clemson, I think they're in, but they could improve their seeding. Cincinnati is playing Kansas today. That could be an interesting one that could shake up the tournament. But what are you guys thinking about today's games?
Cincinnati, Kansas, I'm definitely going to be looking at again. Kansas is a historically good team. Even if I don't like them, I always pay attention to them to see what they're up to. Cincinnati can possibly pull an upset, and then you said the Clemson game is when? Today?
Yeah. Clemson's playing Boston College at 9:30.
Oh, that's a good one.
And Boston College is not a bad team, so if Clemson loses, I think the Tigers are probably in, but it's, cutting it kind of close.
I'm also seeing Xavier and UConn tomorrow, which that's basically a lock win for UConn. Florida State, North Carolina. What else we got? TCU, Houston, like you said. And Arizona, USC should be exciting as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of good games. McNeese State pulled out a victory earlier, and they pretty much had complete control of their conference, and they're looking pretty good for an automatic bid. And just looking at some other games right now, I think you got Texas taking on Kansas State. That can certainly be interesting. Looking others, I'm really interested to see what happens in the Big Ten tournament. They're not paying today, but you got Ohio State who's looking to earn a bid and needs to kind of get there. They're kind of competing with that. Indiana State, and you got teams like Virginia also looking to compete. So some big name schools that need to get a couple wins and do well in their tournaments, and I think that's what's really interesting. You also have Villanova playing today, if I'm not wrong. I'm kind of getting who they're playing. I'm trying to find it.
Villanova is pretty much has a cakewalk win over DePaul. DePaul
Right.
is one of the worst teams in all of college basketball, although if Villanova loses this, obviously, their season's over. I wouldn't even show up to the NIT if you lose to DePaul. That's bad. That's really bad.
And Villanova, another team that's kind of on that bubble, and they can need to do well in the Big East to kind of get their lock into place. So there's a lot of interesting things. It's kind of funny when it comes to these tournaments. It's just what the teams are playing for and how different it can be depending on how you did in the regular season.
And, in a way, just to look at this from a positive angle, in a way, it's almost a good thing that Tennessee lost to Kentucky, because if Tennessee had beaten Kentucky, I think they would have the 1 seed locked up regardless of what happens in this tournament. This loss and how well North Carolina has played has kind of put Tennessee in a position where, wow, we've got something to play for. Now, if we win, yeah, sure. If we lose, we're going to be in the tournament, whatever. If we win, it could be our first 1 seed ever. I believe this for the men's team. I believe this is the first time they would ever be a 1 seed in their history. So this is a big, big deal. So that Kentucky loss kind of gives Tennessee something to play for. And what's interesting is Tennessee's the 1 seed in the SEC tournament. Kentucky is the 4 seed. So if things play out, quote unquote, how they're supposed to, and, everybody, there's no upsets and everything goes according to plan, then in the semifinals, Tennessee and Kentucky would face each other once again. It could be a really good revenge game, and also would be one that where Tennessee once again is playing for a lot.
I think there's a couple interesting ways you can look at that final game against Kentucky, because I think the biggest thing heading into the tournament is, if you'd locked up that 1 seed, I think one positive you could come from it with, if you don't do what you think you're going to do in the tournament. You won that SEC tournament a couple of years ago, so it kind of broke that streak of not being able to get there. You wonder about the rest that you could have gotten if, hey, maybe you didn't go all the way in the SEC tournament. I'm not saying that should be something that you're thinking about, but it would be you'd be able to get a positive. And now that you've dropped that game, you do kind of need to have more success to get that 1 seed. Another thing to think about is just, if you end up with that 1 seed, right, and you end up in Arizona's side of the bracket as a 2 seed, that's a tough 2 seed to go up against. And, maybe, obviously you want that 1 seed. You want to do that for the first time in history. But also if you're just thinking about, if you're trying to take the positives from maybe not a great situation, you could look at maybe an easier bracket if you ended up with what a lot of people are saying is a weaker 1 seed in Purdue, and maybe you having a shot to upset that team. Now, I don't know. I think this Purdue team is a little bit different this year. I think if there's a year that they're going to do it, it's this year. And then if they don't do it this year, then it's like just a legacy of failure in the tournament. And it's really tough. So I think there's a lot of pressure on Purdue to get it done this year, and I do have a claim riding on that because I did say they'd make the Final Four because I was trying to be a little different, but we'll see how that plays out.
Yeah, and just to continue out, just wrap up this segment here before we move on to the next one. Since you mentioned Purdue here, Gabriel, let's just talk about, as we look at the teams, like the teams that we know are going to be in, the 1s and the 2s and the 3s that are all looking like title contenders, are there any of those teams that we're thinking to avoid and then other teams to put stock in? Like, for example, I'll just go first. I'll say, one team I'm going to put a lot of faith in is UConn in this tournament. I know it's hard to repeat as a national champion, but this team just looks so good. They just look so good and so deep, and they play the game so well. I don't see that team, not making it to at least the Elite 8. And then another team that's kind of tough to pick to go far right now is Iowa State. Even though they're going to be a really high seed, that's a team I could see having upset, not in a good way, written all over them. Are there any teams that you guys are looking at that you're thinking, okay, this is a team you got to pick in March Madness, and then another team that's like, this one might be the one that gets upset by a Cinderella team?
No, I'm actually going to go with UConn and North Carolina as my 2 lookout teams. Sure, make fun of me for picking both 1s, but I can basically guarantee you one of those teams is going to get knocked out in the 2nd, maybe 3rd round. And that's just the way things go. There's no real explanation to it. The tournament gets into people's heads, and they end up choking to nobodies.
One team I'm looking forward to, I like what North Carolina and how they're getting hot at this time of the year. I think that plays a lot into it. I like how they've been able to turn things around. The one thing that concerns me about them is I just don't think, the ACC has been as good this year, and I don't know how much they've been truly tested, I think, and that kind of goes into some of my other picks. I'm not feeling great about Duke. I just don't think that they have, I think a lot of what they are this year is off of they're still a good team. It's just I think their name carries a lot of weight for them. Another one is Marquette for me. I think just in that conference, we saw UConn handily take care of them on the road and at home court, and I think they're clear, just based on where they're ranked as a 3 seed, I think they're clear cut below UConn So yeah, and I also really like UConn too. I've been saying it all year, just with what they're returning to that field. So nothing too crazy with the teams that I like, but Duke and Marquette, I'd definitely be. And Marquette is also one of those teams that it always seems they're not able to achieve exactly what they maybe set out for with high seeding at the beginning of tournaments.
Yeah, and what concerns me about Marquette is just the fact that one of their main stars, Tyler Kolek, he's the guy that kind of makes the whole engine move, and he's been injured recently.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know the severity of it because I don't follow that team that closely. But if he is really out for a long time, and if he comes back and he's not really quite how he was before, then yikes, that has upset written all over him because he's really what makes the team move. He's their main passer, shooter, so many key areas that he fills in. You could see how much worse the team is with him. So they got the great record, but if they don't have that star player, it's going to be really hard to pick them to go far. I think the teams that I'm going to pick to go far, at least the Elite Eight, and not overthink it too much, probably are Vols, Tennessee, Houston, I like a lot. Auburn, I think, is a lot of high upside. I like Auburn's team. And then North Carolina, I like the way that they've gotten hot lately. And if I had to say another one, probably Purdue to at least make it to the Elite Eight. And these just getting that far. Now, beyond that, I don't know. We just have to see. But, at least to make it there, I do agree with you. They got to do it this time. But, yeah, pretty much all those other higher teams we just mentioned, I'm probably going to pick them to get upset, somewhere along the way. But that's going to do it for this segment here. We'll be right back. We're going to talk some NFL free agency, which has been absolutely wild. We got to cover that stuff. You're listening to WUTK 90.3, The Rock.
The Rock thanks Fieldhouse Social, Wednesday home for rock solid sports for their support. American craft beer, and cocktails, plus a 25-foot big screen, University Common Square. Fieldhouse Social welcomes sports fans and others alike who enjoy dishes like contenders marinated chicken, grilled Faroe Island salmon, and smoked ribs. FieldhouseSocial.com or on Twitter and Facebook.
Volunteer Radio receives support from Tennessee Smokies Baseball, AA Southern League affiliate of the Chicago Cubs. 2024 regular season schedule features 6 game homestands Tuesday through Sundays now into September at Smoky Stadium in Kodak. Rock Solid Sports will have weekly Smokies updates. TheSmokiesBaseball.com linked up at WUTKRadio.com.
The Rock Banks Pool Company, 1817 Lake Avenue, 1 block south of the Strip, for sponsoring and hosting Monday night Rock Solid Sports broadcast at 7 p.m. Beans is the campus headquarters for food, cruise, pool, shots, darts, sports, and board fun. Tuesday night is team trivia night, and Thursday nights are for biggie. Beansbar.com or their Facebook page for more info.
Volunteer Radio remains on the air thanks to support from the UT Athletic Department. 2024 baseball fall season runs February 8th to May, 8th Mississippi rivals, Georgia, LSU, Missouri, and more. Allballs.com. Students need to show a valid ID update for it. Tune into Rock Solid Sports for UT baseball coverage and the Rock with Coach Vitello and the Baseballs. Good luck in retirement. 90.3 The Rock.
Don't sell something to a man. Tell him it's good, you don't want to be good.
Where music matters most.
The Rock thanks Knoxville Ice Bears Southern Professional Hockey League team for their support. Their 2023-24 home ice season from October through April includes games in Fayetteville, Huntsville, Roanoke, and more at the Civic Coliseum downtown. Single game and season tickets at KnoxvilleIceBears.com. Rock Solid Sports features Ice Bears Wednesdays with news and updates. Volunteer Radio says, "Go Ice Bears!"
Volunteer Radio receives support from the Tennessee Smokies Baseball, AA 17 affiliate of the Chicago Cubs. The 2024 regular season schedule features 6 game home seasons Tuesday through Sundays, now into September at Smoky Stadium. WTK Rock Solid Sports will have weekly Smokies updates. TheSmokiesBaseball.com and the links at WTKRadio.com.
Knoxville, be sure to tune in Wednesday nights from 8 until 10 for The Alternative, featuring 2 hours of the best in Americana music. The station that first brought Knoxville music by bands from back in the old country days. Black Queen on Red, the Blasters, the Jayhawks, Uncle Tupelo and Jason and the Scorchers, the 90s Americana like the Big Boys, Whiskey Count, Gillian Welch, Wilco, and others. Modern day Americana musicians like Margot Price, Zach Bryan, Tyler Childers, Turnpike Troubadours, and Charlie Crockett. You'll also get classic Americana like Lucinda Williams, the Flying Burrito Brothers, and the Birds. And there's local Americana by R.B. Morris, Bruce Gutierrez, Trisha Jean Brady, and Deeply Artist, and others. It's always Patsy Cline at 9 and James's to win Bliss gift cards as upcoming Americana concerts in the area. So, if Americana music makes your musical clock TikTok, tune in Wednesday nights at 8 for the alternative. Sponsored by Boyd, Jimmy Real, Bliss, and Bliss Home. And only on 90.3 The Rock Nation's College of Rock.
All right, we are back coming in for our last segment here, and we're going to talk about NFL free agency. It has been absolutely crazy in the NFL these last few days, and I really don't think I've seen the NFL be as crazy as it has been, especially with the running back position. Let's just go over some of the things. We're going to start with the local, quote-unquote, local team here in Tennessee, the Tennessee Titans. So let's just talk about what they acquired first. They got Tony Pollard, and they signed him before Derrick Henry left. We'll get into that in just a second, as Dylan is probably very excited, about that. But the Titans got Tony Pollard, really good deal for him as a running back. I believe it was 3 years, $24 million a deal. For a running back of his caliber, I think that's a really, really good deal. Now, they also today signed Calvin Ridley. Now, Tennessee did desperately need a wide receiver, so that does have to be pointed out. However, it is, I think, roughly a $90 million deal for Calvin Ridley. And that's basically, they're saying, he's like a wide receiver one. So we'll talk about that here. What do you guys think about those Titans deals? They get Tony Pollard and they get Calvin Ridley, two big-time playmakers. How's that going to improve this Titans offense?
I think they're okay. I'll start with Tony Pollard and go and get into the Derrick Henry stuff too. I think I'm not sure exactly what the conversation was. I think Derrick Henry probably knew he probably wants to win something, and he knew that's probably not happening in Tennessee as of right now in the next couple of years. It hurts my soul that he goes to the Ravens. That's just the one team. It hurts to see him there. And Dylan's got a big old smile on his face. It's tough, but it is what it is. And we all kind of saw that's where this was going. It was rumored at the trade deadline during the last season. So it's tough to see him there. But, I think, if he's wanting to win, I think that's a great spot for him. Sorry, I turned this into Derrick Henry conversation. Let me talk about the Titans. I like Tony Pollard. I had to give big Titans fan. I got to talk about Derrick.
No, that is sad. It truly is a sad day. Even though we got him on a really good deal. I like Tony Pollard a lot, but, the king is gone.
That's not what you guys are focused on.
Yeah, right. But so Tony Pollard, I think, it kind of shows you that they don't want to do like a thunder and lightning approach. It's like they kind of want to switch off with Spears and Pollard, two kind of similar runners, I think. So I think, it's going to be more of a mix there. I still really like Tajay Spears, very explosive player. Both guys that, you're a little concerned about doing a full workload for either of them. So having both of them there, switch off, it makes a lot of sense. And with a new, new people in there, it makes sense to get them in there. And then Calvin Ridley. Now, look, you also signed Lauren Cushenberry, good center, to a big deal to kind of improve that offensive line. And you bring in Calvin Ridley, and it's an overplay. But the fact of the matter is, in this free agency, if you want to get someone at receiver, Calvin Ridley is more of a wide receiver too, right? You're paying him $23 million. It doesn't look great on paper, but if you're just taking kind of a long-term view at this, you got to get someone in at the position. You got to give Will Levis a chance to succeed, right? And that's what you're going into this year looking for. Can Will Levis succeed as your guy? And, if this all falls off the rails, you're going to have to be finding a new quarterback anyway. So it makes sense to have some guys there that can play. And if it all does fall off the rails, by the time you're ready to compete again, these contracts are going to be off the books. If by the time you're paying Will Levis, Calvin Ridley contract is going to be off the books. So it makes sense in the short term to try and get a competitive roster out there next year. I think there's still some big holes in this roster, and you're playing in a division with the Texans and the Colts that are both pretty good teams that have probably gotten better. The Colts kind of stayed the same, but I'm just factoring in Anthony Richardson coming back and him continuing what he showed early last year. So yeah, it's an overpay. It's definitely an overpay, but that comes with free agency. And the Titans have the cap room to take that hit as of right now. And you're giving Will Levis some sort of shot to succeed, I think.
So you brought up Will Levis a couple times there. I noticed that 3 hours ago, the NFL posted that the Titans signed Mason Rudolph from Pittsburgh. Obviously, we want the rookie Will Levis, or not rookie, new-ish, we'll say. He's been around this will be his, second season?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay, cool. Losing track. But you get the veteran in Mason Rudolph to maybe back him up, take a few games if Levis starts to choke or is going cold. But I think the Titans will be fine with their signings. It's more of a emotional thing. I can already tell from you guys aren't happy with what you've lost compared to what you've gained.
I mean, look, let's go. Devin, if it's okay, let's go ahead and start talking.
No, I
mean, bring it up.
I think it's time. Look, I don't know what the conversation was internally. Now, I think looking at it just based on, I think most of last year, and it's hard to discern what was, having the worst offensive line in football and what was Derrick Henry maybe slowing down a little bit. Now, that last Jacksonville game that you saw from him, he looked like old Derrick Henry and the guy that we saw there for years. And this isn't me saying that he still has stuff in the tank for sure. I don't know if it made sense, just for him staying in Tennessee. I don't know. I think when it came down to it, you got new coaching staff in there that are going to go away from what Derrick Henry does best. And Derrick Henry probably knew that. And Derrick Henry probably wanted to go to a team that's more in a spot to compete. And that team always made sense that it was going to be Baltimore. And, I think it's going to be a pretty good fit in Baltimore. He's getting paid, $8 million a year, 2 years, $16 million, something around that.
Yeah.
So it's a good deal that makes a lot of sense. I'm sad as a Titans fan because he was so great. But we knew it was happening. It makes sense. I think people are bringing up the Pollard numbers and the Henry numbers and being like, oh, why didn't you just bring Henry back? We don't know that Henry wanted to come back. And I think a big fact of it is he probably didn't not that he doesn't love Tennessee, but he's just ready for different things in his career. And he wants to compete for some championships and kind of lock up a Hall of Fame bid. So I think it makes a lot of sense for him, makes a lot of sense for the Ravens. It does make sense for the Titans too, because you'd be paying, a 30-plus running back money, and that's just not where this roster is right now for that type of spending.
I was about to say, people bring up the numbers, but as you brought up already, Gabriel, there's so much more than just the numbers. Tony Pollard, you watched him play. He was a starting running back for the Dallas Cowboys. So he is a starting caliber running back. He's got a lot of skills. And Henry obviously is amazing. I think he's got 2 great seasons left because of his age, because of his injury history, which isn't an extensive injury history, but there is some. And he needs to play for a team that does have a great and well-established offensive line. The Titans had arguably the worst offensive line in the NFL. The only team that you could argue is maybe worse offensive line was the Carolina Panthers, but the Titans were pretty low, and they were almost either last or second or third to last at each of the 5 positions. And no doubt we're probably going to draft an offensive lineman in the first round, whether it be Joe Alt from Notre Dame or the guy from Penn State, Fushanu. Both of them are great elite-level tackles. We got the 7th overall pick, so at least one of those 2 is probably going to be available at that spot. Whichever one is, we're going to take that one. We've already got Peter Skronsky, who was a rookie last year. Now he's heading into his 2nd year on the other side. So the offensive line is super important. It takes time to build. The Ravens already have a great one, though. They already have a well-established elite-level offensive line. They've got an elite-level quarterback. They've got a really great coach. They just needed that extra piece. They're like, what do we need to beat the Kansas City Chiefs? Oh, well, maybe we could snag this guy for a couple more years. It makes sense for both sides. I had a feeling, Henry was going to join either the Ravens, the Bills, or the Chiefs because those are the top 3 AFC teams. I just had a feeling you would join one of those teams. Of course, he joined the Ravens. Let's quickly talk about some of the other big signings here that happened. Just the running backs going all over the place. I mean, Saquon Barkley obviously is a big one going to the Philadelphia Eagles. And then we actually, this quarterback, when we saw Kirk Cousins get the bag from the Atlanta Falcons to be their starting quarterback, which I find interesting. What do you guys think about some of these other free agency moves from some of these other non-Titans teams?
So this happened like 15 minutes ago. Joe Flacco is a Colt now. I'm very excited for that. Even I'm disappointed he's not a Raven anymore, but he aged out. Lamar was the future. The fact that this man he's in his mid-30s and is still playing is awesome, winning comeback player of the year last year. The Colts have faith in him. And backing up Anthony Richardson, like I said earlier with Will Levis, you have that veteran status to help out the new guy if he goes cold. And who better than Joe Flacco, in my opinion?
Yeah, I mean, I think it makes a lot of sense, especially with, Richardson coming off surgery. 39 years old for Joe Flacco. So he's up there. He's up there. But, you saw Shane Steichen did a great job with Gardner Minshew last year. So I think, that coaching staff can elevate these type of guys. And, I don't think there's any reason to think that if you have to play Joe Flacco, he can't perform similar to what he gave the Browns last year. I think Kirk Cousins makes a lot of sense for Atlanta, kind of where that roster is. They need somebody who can go in there and play quarterback. Desmond Ridder was really bad last year, and there's reasons you can look into that and be like, if we just get a stable force at quarterback, we have the guys around that we can make a run at this, especially in an NFC South that's pretty weak. I mean, your biggest competition in there is the Bucs, and I like Baker Mayfield, but they're going to be a popular pick to kind of regress this year. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out. I think it makes a lot of sense. He is coming out a ruptured Achilles, another guy that's up there in age. You're paying him a lot of money, but the Falcons even with a new coach, the Falcons, there's some sort of expectation for them to be good soon. So it makes sense going more of the veteran route. And some of the, other signings, there's interesting stuff throughout. Colts pretty much just locked up, the standard guys. They do what they do. Chris Ballard doesn't spend a lot of money on outside guys when it comes to free agency, but they got Michael Pittman back. Was there another big one? I'm trying to think. What else did you say, Devin?
I also mentioned the Saquon one as well, just because he's going to a rival team, got a lot of money from the Philadelphia Eagles, who, interestingly enough, they've got quite a roster. They had a couple major retirements. Of course, Jason Kelsey and Fletcher Cox both gone. But, they still have a very good, I'd say, if they could put it all together, Super Bowl contending roster still with all those pieces that they've got. Now they got Saquon. These last couple of minutes here, there was a lot of big moves, a lot of guys staying home. You mentioned Michael Pittman. You mentioned Baker Mayfield re-signing with the Tampa Bay Bucs, so he is their franchise guy, which I like to see that from Baker. He actually proved he can be a franchise quarterback. He got there. He is. And I know that Austin Eckler moved on to another team as well. I just can't remember off the top of my head.
I think he went to the Commanders.
Oh, yeah, Washington. That's right. He signed a 2-year deal, I'm pretty sure. And there's just been so much movement at the running back position. This seems like this could be where the future is heading for that position. You just spend a few years on a team and go elsewhere because, hate to say it, but some of the two most recent dynasties, the Patriots and the Chiefs, neither one of them spent a whole lot of time on having a franchise running back. I mean, the Patriots would just have a random rotation of guys. And after their rookie contracts were done, they were like, oh, okay, see ya. And the Chiefs are doing the exact same thing. And it just seems to be a formula that's working. I mean, it's hard to get a running back that just stays with one team the whole time. So it'll be interesting to see how that continues throughout as a trend with the NFL. But that is going to wrap up our time here. Thank you guys so much for joining us here on WUTK's 90.3 The Rock's Rock Solid Sports. Hopefully you guys are back with us on Friday. You've been listening to 90.3 The Rock, UT's College of Rock. Hey, how's it going? Sorry, let me just get this stuff out of your way for you.
Cool.
Mess of CDs I bring